and welcome back. And we have the pleasure this morning of having Representative Jeff Collins, District 25, on with us this morning. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. It's good to be with y'all as always.
So glad to have you here. Well, let's start out. We want to know what's going on in the General Assembly and want to know some bills that you're working on and all kinds of things. But first of all, how's the campaign going?
It's going fine. Of course, we're into the crunch time now, the last couple of months.
Oh, yeah.
I've got somewhere to go just about every night
Right,
from now till the time.
I'm sure.
Till November 8th, the day of the election. Of course,
Okay.
early voting starts October the 20th, I think, in Nashville, and October 27th everywhere else. So people will be voting just a little over a month from now.
That's right.
Absolutely, they will. Okay, well, tell us a little bit about what's going on. What are you working on?
Well, as you know, the General Assembly just finished up our 2015-2016 session. We have 2-year sessions, the long session and the odd years in which we get all our bills introduced, and then if they get to a certain point and don't get passed, you can work on them a little bit more in the short session, which we just got finished. I had several bills passed into law, as always. The ones that people know about probably, most of all, are the one that Senator Newton and I have been working on for 5 years, the Nakempa asset sale.
Electricities for everybody else.
Yeah, Electricities, that's right. Which is, that was my House Bill 265. His bill was Senate Bill 305, which was the very same thing. We pushed his across first, so that's the one that passed. Both of us had worked extremely hard on that. I had even given up chairmanship of the Insurance Committee last session so that I could be chairman of the Public Utilities Committee to make sure that that the House committee that was going to hear this would be favorable towards this. And of course, the end result is we got it passed. Duke Progress purchased the generation assets from Electricities. That lowered the wholesale cost by something like 18 or 19%.
Yeah, the average was 19% across the state.
Right.
22 municipalities then were able to see those savings for their citizens.
Right. Now, Rocky Mount has ameliorated that a little bit by just about tripling their franchise fee at the same time we passed that, but still, I'm told by Rick Worsinger that the average residential citizen is getting a 14% lower utility bill. than
Their
before.
specific electricity bill has gone down, but
Right.
then your fees for your gas and water have crept upward. So they've kind of recouped all
and
their
electricity.
and electricity. Yeah, your
Well,
fixed
But
costs.
as far as what we were able to do at the state, we were able to keep a promise which we had made to people for 5 years that we were going to do
Right.
everything within our power to try to lower their electricity bill. Because for our people who are on a fixed income and people at the lower end of the income scale, this is, as everybody knows, this has been probably the biggest issue they've faced for the last 30 years is trying to pay their utility bills. And we tried to do everything we
Absolutely.
could to help them.
Well, I know you did, and we certainly appreciate the efforts of you and Buck on
We
that.
we also were able to pass Senate Bill 382, which we rewrote to solve
I think
our,
everybody's familiar with it, but they don't know what that means.
right. Well,
It's the National Rocky Mount School merger issue.
yeah, it is. You know, it's been pointed out, there's been inequitable funding. Nash County citizens have been paying part of the funding of the Edgecombe County schools that live on the Nash County side. So we passed a bill, a compromise bill, which everybody got on board, Democrats and Republicans from this area, and finally solved what's been a very contentious issue, and hopefully we've put that behind us. So those are the two big things that we did locally. We did some other things too. We expanded the House Bill 81, which is my bill. We expanded the 1% $80 mill machinery tax. That was important. I had that pointed out to me by Darrell Edwards over at Edwards Crane, and also Travis Ward at used to be Rocky Mount Recycling, Regional Materials Recovery. It is now.
RCR.
Because the Department of Revenue had changed their ruling on the classification of any machines that are involved in manufacture that you buy.
Right.
You don't have to pay full sales tax on it. Because that could be millions of dollars just in taxes, because the
Right.
machine might cost $100 million.
Right, and you capitalize and depreciate them, and
Right.
you pay different taxes, and you pay property taxes on them as well.
So anyway, what we did was the Department of Revenue had been kind of changing their definitions of what these machines were, so we tried to make sure that people weren't getting charged full sales tax on things that they shouldn't have been charged full sales tax on. And then there were some other things too. We passed House Bill 168. That was a bill that my seatmate and I introduced, which exempted builder's inventory from reclassification. In other words, if you're building a spec house and it hasn't sold yet, you're not going to have to pay full real estate value based on the improved value of that property until either you sell the house or we weren't going to give them.
And
we weren't
that's
going to
a-
give them permanent exemption. So 3 years. If you haven't
Right.
sold the house in 3 years, you're going to have to.
And let me
pay.
tell you, that's
Good.
a huge deal for those who
is.
are builders because they basically had what was called a 13-month window. Because you could buy it in month 0, but then you had 12 months after you bought it to build and sell the house. If the CO was ready for that house, you were going to be responsible for not only the property taxes but the
Right.
material taxes. Now they have a little more cushion to
Right.
try to turn those houses over.
Well, we did that to try to help. Obviously, the construction industry and the building industry is one that we need to bring back. So that was one that we were just trying to help. It's like I heard you guys say before I got here. It is very true that government cannot create jobs. The only money government has is money it takes out of somebody's pocket. And so anytime somebody says they're going to create, like I've heard Miss Hillary say, she's going to create hundreds of thousands of jobs, you better be scared. All government can do is create an atmosphere in which job creators can thrive. And that's what
Right.
we've been trying to do in North Carolina for the last 6 years. So those are some of the things I've been involved in personally in the General Assembly over the
Well,
last couple of years.
Jeff did not know I was going to say this, but I talked to 2 or 3 people in a neighborhood, went to a friend's house in a neighborhood, and then another one was next door and that kind of thing. And I asked, they said, do you know where I can get some Jeff Collins signs? I said, well, headquarters is, at
Right.
Westridge,
The old
and
AAA
I
office.
suppose they have some. They said, I'll tell you what, we didn't get annexed because of him. We want some signs. So we know that you are working, and this is, when you do good things, I mean, this is, your result. I mean, people appreciate it, and, I thought it was great that those people remembered some of your tireless, hard work in the General Assembly.
Well, one thing that Senator Newton and I both have taken the attitude of is that we're not going to fail to tackle things just because they're difficult, or just because people say the problem's insoluble, or just because it's going to be controversial, or just
Right.
because somebody's going to get mad. We want to do the right thing regardless of
Right.
what the obstacles are in the way.
Speaking of
you work for the
controversial,
people.
let's walk into that landmine. There's 2 things that, in general in politics, but there's 2 things that right now that are getting a lot of air attention in terms of media and other things: education and, of course, HB2.
Right.
There's a lot of there are what some are calling a misleading ad from Cooper, saying that the statistics he's showing in his ads are incorrect or manipulated to be favorable for his particular slant. And then there's, HB2 talking about the damage it's doing to North
Right.
Carolina. I'll let you pick which one you want to
Well,
go after first.
Let's talk about education first. That's
Okay.
something, and he does give some partial statistics on that. He's got the poor old teacher that's having to leave because she's not making enough money, and she's talking about how 2,200 teachers are leaving with her. Well, that's partially true. 2,200 teachers have left the state for one reason or another over the last 4 years. During the same period of time, 8,500 teachers have moved into North Carolina from out of state.
So he gave half the truth.
Yeah, so we're getting 4 moving to North Carolina for every 1 we're moving out. So if you're just using teacher migration, which I don't think that's the only, you can't prove anything from one statistic, but if you're only using teacher migration, North Carolina must be a great place for teachers to work, because we're getting 4 moving here for every 1 we're
For
moving out.
everyone, that's right.
Now, the true statistics are this, and I wish I had brought my little chart, because I've got a chart that shows K through 12 funding from 2008 to 2016. And in 2008 through 2010, it's blue because the Democrats are in charge, and it's going like this. And starting in 2011, it's red. That's when we took the, and it's going like this. We have increased K through 12 spending every year I've been in the General Assembly.
Right.
We've increased it now by a total of $1.65 billion a year, which is 24% more than was being spent on it in 2011. As far as teacher pay, this past year, 2016, we just gave them an average 4.7% raise. That was on top of the biggest teacher pay raise in the nation in 2015. Now, who says we gave teachers the biggest raise in the nation? Believe it or not, the NEA, who hates our guts. They don't like to give us credit for
Right.
anything because they give all their political money to Democrats. But even they had to admit that we gave the biggest pay raise in the country, and then top it with another 5% raise
Right.
the next year. So we're definitely showing our concern for paying teachers. More important than that, to me, it's important to pay teachers, but what I'm concerned about is that kids get a good education. Now, a nonpartisan group that ranks schools on only 2 factors, student performance and safety, which I'd say are probably the 2 most important things in a school. You want your kid to be safe on the go, you want them to learn. While I've been in the General Assembly, North Carolina has gone from 37th in the nation to 19th.
Right.
So we're twice as
Wow.
good compared to other states as we were 6 years ago. So what we're doing is working in education. And the final thing I'll say about education funding that I don't think the average citizen has a clue about is North Carolina, as a state, what the General Assembly puts into education. North Carolina as a state pays the seventh, or invests the seventh most per capita on K through 12 education of any state in the country. You never hear
wow.
that as a state.
didn't
Now,
know that.
we don't support it on the local level the way some of the states up north and out west and all do. And I tell people all the time, hey, if you want us to be, in the top 10 in total education funding, there's a real simple solution for that. Ask your county commissioners to double your property taxes and have them like they do up in New Jersey and so forth, and we're immediately there. Our state funds education very, very strongly, seventh strongest in the country. So
And
those
education
those are some true statistics on education.
And education, for those who don't realize it, is a mixed funding formula. There
It
is
is.
state funds, there are federal funds, and there are local funds that all go into
That's
it. There's
correct.
not one source for all the funding.
Now, you also mentioned the economy. You want me to get into that or not?
Yeah.
Well, HB2 is hurting the
Yeah.
economy, is what we're hearing now.
Well, I'm a numbers wonk. I mean, I'm a financial consultant, so I'm not swayed a whole lot by these anecdotal stories that people give. I look more at the statistics, at the numbers. Of course, we've done a lot of things to try to help stimulate the economy, to try to help people keep more money in their pockets, to try to help job producers have more money from their companies. As you probably know, one of the things we've done is we've lowered personal income tax rates. When I got to the General Assembly, they started at 6%, went to 7%. If you made a certain amount, then to 7.75%. And even in the recession, I don't know if you remember this, they passed a surtax on your tax.
Right.
If you were making more
I
than a
remember
certain
that.
amount, you had to pay whatever your
Right.
tax was, you had to pay another 3% of that as a surtax on your tax. Now, that's always to punish the wealthy or to make the wealthy pay their fair share. Every time you hear that, you need to be very scared. Because who were these wealthy people that needed to be punished with a surtax on their tax? If you were a single individual and made $60,000,
You were too rich.
$60,000, you were making
Golly.
too much money and had to pay a surtax on your tax. That's how Democrats think.
Yeah.
My thinking is, I want North Carolina to be so well off that everybody's making more than $60,000.
Absolutely.
But anyway, we've lowered the personal income tax. It's now just below 5.5% for all citizens. At the same time, and equally important, we've raised the standard deduction. Now, that's the amount you don't have to pay taxes on. That's what we call the 0%
Right.
tax bracket. For a couple, for instance, that was sitting at $6,000 in 2011 when I first started serving. We've raised it all the way up till next year. It'll be $17,500.
Wow.
Now, I've seen this in print completely, I don't know how to say it other than lied about, because they'll say, dropping the rate helps the people at the top the most. Well, that's true because they're paying the highest rates. And then they'll say, but this standard deduction helps everybody. Well, it doesn't. I'll tell you who it doesn't help. It doesn't help me because I give away more than $17,500 in charitable contributions every year.
Right.
So I don't get a penny of help out of this. The people that are much higher than I am on the income scale don't get a penny of help out of this because you figure if all your standard deductions, your mortgage interest that you're paying,
Right.
your charitable
Well,
contributions.
most people would itemize.
Yes,
so
that's
then your
right.
standard deduction doesn't apply.
Doesn't help them. I'll tell you who this does help. Let me give you an example. You got a couple making $20,000. I think we would all agree that's pretty near the bottom of the income spectrum. Used to, they only got $6,000 exempted, then paid 6% on the rest. So they'd pay $840 in state income taxes in
If you
2011.
made $20,000, you were
That's right, 840. Stick with me. That was when I got there. Now, with 17,500 exempted and the rate we've got now, which is below 5.5%, that same couple at the bottom of the income scale would now pay $138. So they've got an 84% reduction in their taxes, their state income tax. So people are saying we aren't helping
Wow.
people at the bottom don't know. They either don't know the facts or they're ignoring the facts or they're lying
being
about the
misleading
facts.
about it. Yeah.
One of those three. Now, we've also dropped the state sales tax. People complain, yeah, you broadened the base of the states. Well, they have.
Now, I want to attack you on one thing.
Okay.
When I go buy my bag of popcorn at the movie theater now, I'm paying a full
That's-
sales
that's
tax
correct.
instead of the 2% I used to get.
That is correct.
That's your fault.
That is my fault. But what was the first thing we did with the sales tax in 2011? Again, during the recession, the Democrats raised the sales tax
Right.
17% from 4.75 to 5.75. Now, that's before the counties tack on theirs. That's
Right.
just the state part. First thing we did was kept their promise that was going to be temporary. And against their yelling and screaming and kicking, we lowered it back to 4.75.
How often does government make something temporary?
Very seldom. Very,
Yes,
very seldom.
Very seldom.
Now, I also heard y'all talking about this when I was sitting outside the door before I came in. At the same time, we lowered the corporate income tax. It was a very uncometitive 6.9% when I got to the General Assembly in 2011.
Right.
And I know when Pat McCrory was first elected, Nikki Haley, the governor of South Carolina, told him, we don't even consider y'all a competitor anymore. Y'all aren't even in the game. Well, we have lowered the corporate tax rate now to 3%. Which is the lowest, and I have to be careful I say this, I want to be completely honest with you, it's the lowest of any state that has a corporate income tax. There are a handful of states that have no
That
corporate
have
income
none,
tax, just like
yes.
there are a handful of states that have no
Sales tax.
And there are a handful of states that have no personal income tax.
Oh, yeah, that's
and
right.
Tennessee's got about a 10% sales tax and no income tax.
And the worst part about Tennessee is if you collect all your sales tax receipts, you can turn those in and get
Right.
reimbursed for your sales tax that you've already paid.
Right.
I have a friend of mine who literally does that. I'm like, and he makes back, he pays no income tax, pays the 10% sales tax, and he makes about $600 a year on his taxes by just submitting his receipts.
But the key to this is by lowering the corporate income tax to 3%, we have become extremely competitive. And now companies that wouldn't look at us in 2011 are not only looking at us, but coming here.
Now, number 5.
Hey, we got CSX.
Now, number 5 on your little list here is huge, especially for agriculture, especially for people who have been here for generations. And if you live in California, you don't have this opportunity right here.
What he's talking about, and frankly, I had forgotten about this one. We've done so much to abolish taxes.
But this is
and lower
huge.
taxes.
This
I know
is really huge.
You know, I was reminded about this by a fellow who attended a Rotary Club meeting that I spoke at the other day. He said, "You forgot about abolishing the death tax." He said, "My dad sold his house in New Jersey and was going to move down here, and then when he found out y'all had the death tax, he was going to moved to Virginia just across the border, and then y'all abolished the death tax, and he was able to move to North Carolina. This means now that your kids can inherit your stuff when you die without North Carolina asking for a cut of it.
Right.
And this is very big. We did abolish this back, I believe it was in the 2013-2014 session. And we also abolished the land transfer tax. Used to, every time you sold a piece of property, state wanted to tax that. So we've not
Tax
only
you
have
coming,
we
tax you going. as they
yeah,
used
not
to
only
say.
have we lowered a lot of taxes, we've abolished some taxes. Now, every time we got ready to lower or abolish one, the other side of the aisle in the House would start moaning, "Oh, it's the end of the world, the sky's going to fall, we're not going to have enough revenue to govern," and blah, 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 blah. So if you take everything I've given you, the total tax relief in North Carolina that we've given in the last 6 years comes to $3 billion per year. That's $3 billion more that's in your pocket that the state doesn't take out of your pocket. So obviously the state government is in just terrible shape, right? I mean, we've got to be in horrible financial situation. Well, here's what's happened. Number one, I've got on my little cheat sheet here that we're the 4th fastest growing economy in the nation. That's the most conservative ranking I've seen. Some say number 1. Depending on when you rank it, we have the fastest growing GDP,
Right.
Which is the biggest economic
We move the
indicator in
needle back
country.
4 years versus 5
Yep.
years. Depending on if you move it back to 2008, everybody has a different
Right.
measuring
We're
stick.
either 1, 2, or 4. I
Right.
put the low, so we're in the top 4 fastest growing economies in the country. We have, this one is extremely important to me because during the 2000s, the last full decade that Democrats had charge of our state government, we were constantly falling behind the rest of the country in wage growth. We were high in unemployment, but even the jobs we had, the wages weren't growing.
Right, right.
For the first time in the last quarter, we have met or exceeded the country's income growth for 10 consecutive quarters. First time since 1996. First time in 20 years that we have met or exceeded the country's income growth rate for 10 consecutive quarters, 2.5 years. That's huge.
Jeff, can you stick around for a few more minutes?
Sure.
We do need to take a quick break, and then we'll keep the conversation going.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Whether it's #1 in safety with airbags and anti-lock brakes,
Thank goodness.
or is capable of towing up to 7,000 pounds and gets 27 miles per gallon,
Or can serve as a weekend family car and still get the job done.
or even goes 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds and has a 4-wheel independent suspension that hugs every corner, Don Bullock Chevrolet has the perfect car for you. So stop by and do it the better way at Don Bullock Chevrolet.
If you need a car and you have a job, OK Loans will treat you like you're more than a credit score. Come see Jay, Kenny, and Tim, and we will have you riding today. Honda, Toyota, Chevrolet, Ford, and more. Used cars, trucks, SUVs, and minivans. It's all OK at OK Loans, where we have it all. There's a vehicle waiting for you at 1920 North Westland Boulevard, adjacent to Don Bullock in Rocky Mount. Call us today at 903-0525. When the bank says no, OK Loans says yes.
PNC presents, and the city of Rocky Mount hosts Downtown Live, May 12th through September 29th on the Imperial Center Lawn, 270 Gay Street. Admission is free. Hear from groups like the Legacy Motown Review, the Tams, the Embers featuring Craig Woolard, and more. Thanks to PNC and to all the following sponsors. Doors open at 5 p.m. Music starts at 6.
E. Norman Davis & Son, Incorporated, is a family-owned third-generation full-service real estate company that specializes in residential construction. In addition to building residential homes, we buy, sell, trade, and lease properties in the Rocky Mount, Nashville, and surrounding areas. We are currently building in Weathervane Hill, Fairfield Village, and Wedgwood Commons subdivision. Our company has a reputation for building long-standing relationships with our clients and will stand behind our homes with amazing customer service long after the final papers have been signed. Contact us today at 252-937-6022 or visit us at 1228 Bethlehem Road.
The Triangle's largest home and garden show returns with fresh ideas for inside and outside your home and top experts ready with solutions and advice. See what's new in kitchen and bath. Check out this year's top 10 life-changing products. Take home great bargains and accessories. Enjoy tasty samples. And new this year, shop the showcase of local artists. It's the Southern Ideal Home Show, September 23rd through 25th at the NC State Fairgrounds.
It's more than just a home show.
Okay, and welcome back. We have with us, in case you just turned on the TV, Representative Jeff Collins, District 25, and he is imparting some very good information this morning, telling us he's been hard at work. So anyway, let's talk about HB2 a little bit. We were talking about that a little bit before you came on, so let's expound on that a little bit. Are we losing a lot of money in the state? What's going on?
Well, if you read the News Observer or watch Channel 5 News or listen to Roy Cooper's ad, you'd think it's the death of the state revenue-wise. But let me give you some real information here. Okay. You know, we hear that we're losing so much money this year because of HB2. If that's the case, I don't know what in the world we'd be doing, because North Carolina's revenue growth this year over last year. We passed HB2 2015. Mm-hmm. What effect is it having in 2016? Well, we're the 9th largest state in the country by population. If you take the average revenue growth for the 20 largest states, of which we're one, how do you think we're faring with the other states? Obviously, if you believe Roy Cooper, we're falling way behind, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we're not behind. We're ahead. We're not ahead by 10%. We're not ahead by 20%. We're not ahead by 30%. We're not ahead by 80%. Believe it or not, our revenue growth rate this year is doubling the rate of the other largest. Now, that's unheard of. We're running 100% in revenue growth ahead of the other 19 largest states in the country. So if HB2 is hurting us, I wish we could be hurt like this every year. I really do. Right. Now, I will say this. We have decided as a General Assembly, and our governor has decided, to stand up for the decency and privacy of our individual citizens. You know, we don't think, like the Obama Justice Department argued in court, that it is discriminatory to write men and women. This is what the Justice Department argued in court, that to even put the words men and women on a bathroom
is offensive.
It's not just offensive, it's unconstitutional discrimination. Now, even the ACLU lawyers did not argue that point. Now, that's what they want. They want men to be able to go in unchallenged into women's bathrooms. They want boys in school to be able to go unchallenged into girls' locker rooms, because if you even ask the person, are you transgender, that's discriminating. Mm-hmm. Now, we know we have far more sexual predators in North Carolina than we have transgender people.
We sure do.
And to even ask a man if he's going into a bathroom in Target, are you a transgender, is to discriminate. So you have to let him go in there.
And I actually ran those statistics earlier this year. There's over 17,000 registered sex offenders in North Carolina, and there's less than 10,000 identified transgender people in North Carolina.
So my point is this: what the Obama administration wants and the future they foresee for your children and grandchildren and mine, and the future Roy Cooper sees for your children and grandchildren and mine, is a future where it's claimed that there is no difference between male and female, that you can just be whatever you want to and change it on a moment-by-moment basis. Everybody goes and exposes themselves in the same bathroom. They want your children and grandchildren totally desensitized that and totally confused about what sex they are. And I'm just not for that. The people of North Carolina have overwhelmingly said they're not for that. And I'll fight to keep my little 7-year-old granddaughter and my 4 and 2-year-old grandsons, to give them the same privacy rights all of us have enjoyed all our lives. And I'll fight to my last breath against George Soros and against all these other far-left liberals and against Roy Cooper and against everybody who's trying to shove this down North Carolina's throat. I'm really sick and tired of the salt of the earth. And I believe the majority of the people in my district in the state of North Carolina are this type of people. They love God, they love their country, they love their family, they get out and work hard, they pay their taxes, they raise their own children, they take responsibility for feeding and clothing and buying school supplies and everything else for their own children, and they're told to just sit down, shut up, we don't want to hear your opinion, you just keep paying your taxes and supporting everybody else who's not paying their way. And I'm sick and tired of that, and I'll fight. That's the people that I think about when I go on the House floor every day, and that's the people that I'm fighting for.
That's great, Jeff. We're so thankful to have you in there.
Now, I know, recently, just this week, the NCAA has come down and taken away sports. The NBA has come down and taken away sports. What is your response to the outside influence on North Carolina with HB2?
Well, it's not just outside influence. Remember, we've got some in our own state who are trying to get these people to do that, and taking campaign contributions like Roy Cooper did from the NBA commissioner and so forth. My thoughts are this: number one, sports franchises, especially professional sports franchises, are the most unloyal people in the world. The NBA's already left Charlotte one time, and if the current team thinks they can make an extra dollar by going somewhere else, they'll be out tomorrow. So that's you can't count on those types of things.
Right.
They'll be here today, gone tomorrow. I'm more concerned about jobs coming to North Carolina, like the CSX facility that's coming here, that are going to come, be good corporate citizens and provide permanent jobs here in North Carolina. But I will say this too, Democrats love anecdotes and they love sob stories and so forth. So let me go to their level a minute and tell you something. We don't know how many people are now living and working and paying taxes in North Carolina because of our social conservative stance. But I can tell you this. I know a woman in the Triangle area who came here from Massachusetts about 10 years ago. She's a professional financial consultant like I am. Her husband is an IT professional. They moved here with 3 children who have since gone to college, and one's now a 3rd tax-paying citizen in North Carolina. They moved here from Massachusetts about 10 years ago when Massachusetts passed their gay marriage law because North Carolina didn't have it. Just this one person has given me examples of people who have moved here from California, from another one from Boston, from New York, all who moved here either to continue to work here or to bring their retirement money here because of our socially conservative stances. I know a young man who just moved to our area a couple of years ago from Ohio. His dad is a master sergeant up in Ohio. He has 3 master sergeants working under him. He's a chief master sergeant. Normally, my friend's father comes to North Carolina to the beach to vacation because he's got family here. The other 3 families normally go to the Gulf Coast, Florida or Mississippi. This year, because we passed HB2, all 4 families came to vacation in North Carolina and spend their money here in support of us. Now, I don't know how many thousands of times that's happening across our state. I only know what people tell me. But it's got to be happening because our revenue is exploding in North Carolina. And there's no other explanation for it other than people see that we're serious about protecting our women and children. We're serious about continuing to be good, law-abiding, hard-working citizens here in North Carolina. And people like that. And I think if we continue on that path, we'll probably have to build a fence around North Carolina to keep the people out.
Well, and the last thing I want to mention about HB2 before we move on is it has become a catch-all for the entire LGBTQ agenda, and maybe they have their certain concerns, and maybe some of those concerns are legitimate, but they're being confused with HB2 because HB2 only applies to state publicly owned
Right.
property.
Right.
It has nothing
Not
to do with private businesses and
That's
private houses and residential use. So if Target wants to have whatever they want for their bathrooms, they can do whatever they want. The state law has nothing to do with that.
Well, it actually does, and here's how it does. You talk about something that would kill business in North Carolina. The ordinance that Charlotte passed, which is where this all got started,
Right.
was an ordinance they did not have the authority to pass. They were told ahead of time by their legislators that they didn't have the authority to pass and that it would be overturned at the state level. They passed an ordinance which told businesses, not just located in Charlotte,
Right.
but if you're going to
Theirs told businesses what to
do
do.
business in Charlotte with anybody in Charlotte, here's what you have to do. You have to have these sex-free bathrooms and so forth in your facility, even if it's in Elizabeth City or
And
whatever.
churches, too.
Yes. Now, imagine this. Imagine you're a business that does business across the state, and every municipality and every county can make their own set of rules that you've got to go by. So now you've got 300 sets of business rules that you've got to go by. It's crazy. Business rules always have to be done on a state level. The ordinance that Charlotte passed would have killed business in North Carolina. Suppose you get two municipalities saying opposite things. Suppose Charlotte says you've got to have gender-free bathrooms, and Burgall says you've got to have gender-specific bathrooms. What are you going to do as a business? In order to do, I mean, it's crazy. It's nuts. So Charlotte passed an ordinance they had no authority to pass. They knew going in. It was done by a mayor with a far-left agenda who was elected when 92% of the people of Charlotte stayed home in a mayoral election. So, folks, if you're one of these hard-working people
So
I'm talking
8%
about,
of the population
elected her. That's right, or a fraction of 8%. So make sure you come out and vote in this election. If your values are important to you, please make sure you come out and vote in this election.
All right.
Absolutely.
And you've
Well,
got an event coming up.
You do. The Nash and Franklin County GOP executive committees are presenting.
Yes, I'm really excited about this. I heard this gentleman speak a year ago at Farrington Village near Pittsburgh, and I determined right then if there was any way my committee we were going to get him to speak. I don't know how many of you have read the book or seen the movie 13 Hours about the operatives in Benghazi that tried to save the ambassador and his staff, even though they were kept back by the State Department from doing anything for a critical period of time. But
13 hours.
Yep. If you've read that book, Chris Paranto, the guy they call Tonto Paranto, is coming to speak to us. He'll be at the Dunn Center on Monday night, October the 24th. You'll begin to see posters about this around town, but you can go to eventbrite.com, and again, the Bright is B-R-I-T-E, eventbrite.com, or there's a telephone number you can call if you're not an online person.
557-3109.
Yeah, 557-3109. You can order tickets that way. If you forget these two things, call me. I've got my cell phone number on every card I've got. If you got one of my legislative cards, my home number is on ncleg.net. If you want to leave a message there, we'll make sure you're able to come. 1,200 seats in the Dunn Center, and I hope we pack the place out.
Well, I think you will, Jeff. You know, Chris Paranto was a survivor of Benghazi,
Yes.
and you really want to hear this. You really do want to hear this firsthand account that he will be giving. And by the way, I believe he does endorse Representative Jeff Collins.
He will be there in support of my campaign.
Support
That's
of,
right.
Yes.
And you may have to hear some of this. You may have to hear some of this stuff again.
Well,
if you want to
and
hear it.
again,
okay.
his credentials, we don't have time to go on, but he is an Army Ranger. He
Right.
has CIA training. He knows what he's talking about.
Right.
He was there
Well,
in
he was there.
Benghazi. And so it's not just a matter of somebody who's a subject matter expert. He is the on-site expert of what happened.
I would say if you haven't had a chance to see the movie 13 Hours or read the book, do one or the other before he comes, and then I'll guarantee you'll want to come hear him speak.
Yep.
Absolutely. And the date again is Monday evening, 7 o'clock. Monday evening, October 24th, 7 p.m. at the Dunn Center. And let's pack the place because it's going to be a great event. And it will be a one-time opportunity to get a first-hand account in person from Chris Paranto, also known as, I believe, Tonto.
That's right.
So,
And if there are
anyway.
people out there who want to spend a little more money to support my campaign and who want to get up a little more up close and personal with Chris, of course, he'll do a book sign at the end. If you want to buy his book, he'll sign the book and talk to you at the end. He did that to me in Pittsburgh. But if you want to get involved in a little more heavily financial, and a little more tightly knit group, we're going to have a smaller sponsors dinner right before the event. in another side room at 6 o'clock. So when you make your phone call, you can mention that as well.
Again, that's 557-3109 for the Dunn Center.
Yeah, you don't want to miss this. So
All right.
anyway, thank you, Jeff, for coming on and updating us.
Thank you. It's always fun. As you can see, I'm pretty
Absolutely.
passionate about
You
what
are.
we're doing in the General
And
Assembly.
that's what's so important. You are passionate. You're there for the right reason. So anyway, we'll look forward to you coming back and updating us real soon.
Be happy to. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back.